The knife wasn't meant for her. Zara would understand that later when the adrenaline faded and logic returned. But standing in the sterile white kitchen of Junho's Itaewon apartment at 2 a.m, with a masked intruder's blade pressed against her ribs and her husband nowhere in sight, understanding felt like a luxury she'd never afford again. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The intruder smelled like cigarettes and desperation. And then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Junho appeared in the doorway, still in his dress shirt from whatever late meeting had kept him away. But it wasn't his presence that made her knees weak. It was his eyes. Cold. Lethal. Empty of everything except a promise she didn't know he was capable of making. The intruder tightened his grip. Junho didn't flinch. He spoke in Korean, his voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, but Zara felt the threat in every syllable even though she couldn't understand the words. The man holding her laughed nervously, said something back. Junho's jaw tightened. Then he moved. Zara didn't see how it happened. One moment the knife was at her side. The next, Junho had the man pinned against the marble counter, forearm across his throat, and the blade was on the floor 3 feet away. The intruder gasped for air. Junho leaned in close, speaking in English now, and his voice was so calm it terrified her more than the knife had. "You came into my home. You touched my wife. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right here." Zara's voice cracked when she tried to speak. "Junho." His eyes snapped to hers, and what she saw there stole the rest of her words. Not anger, something worse. Fear. Raw, unfiltered fear that didn't belong on the face of the man who'd barely acknowledged her existence for 6 months. "Are you hurt?" He didn't release the intruder, but his tone shifted when he addressed her. Softer. Desperate. "Zara, tell me he didn't hurt you." She shook her head, mute, because how was she supposed to process this? How was she supposed to reconcile this version of Junho with the stranger who'd signed a contract to marry her, who treated their penthouse like a corporate office, who looked through her like she was wallpaper? Sirens wailed in the distance. The intruder wheezed something in Korean. Junho's grip tightened for a moment before he finally released him, stepping back but keeping himself between Zara and the threat. "The police are coming," he said, still watching the man on the floor. "Don't move." Then he turned to Zara, and his hands were shaking when he reached for her, actually shaking. He cupped her face, tilting it up to examine her in the dim kitchen light, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "He didn't hurt you. Tell me he didn't hurt you." "I'm fine," Zara whispered. "But you weren't supposed to be home until Thursday. You're in Busan for the Lee Holdings merger. How did you?" "I felt something." The words came out strangled, like he was confessing a crime. "In the middle of the presentation, I felt this panic, like I couldn't breathe, like something was crushing my chest, and I knew." His forehead dropped to hers, and the vulnerability in that single gesture nearly broke her. "I knew you were in danger, so I left, told them to postpone everything. Caught the first KTX train back because I had to. I had to make sure you were safe." Zara's throat tightened. "Why would you do that? We're not. This isn't real. You married me because your board demanded it, because a wife looks better than the rumors. You don't even." "Everyone's wrong." Junho pulled back just enough to look at her, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her forget how to breathe. "They've been wrong about me from the beginning, and I let them be wrong because it was easier. But you," his jaw clenched, "you're my wife, mine, and I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. Touch what's mine and I'll destroy them." The police burst through the door before Zara could respond. Officers flooded the apartment, separating them, asking questions in rapid Korean. Someone wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Junho spoke to the lead detective with cold efficiency, but his eyes kept finding hers across the room, checking, making sure she was still there, still whole, still breathing. And all Zara could think was, who is this man I married? Because this story doesn't start with knives and confessions and train rides through the night. This story starts 7 months earlier, in a cramped office in Accra, where Zara's entire future was being negotiated like a business transaction. And maybe that's all it was supposed to be. Being the eldest daughter meant sacrifice was expected. Zara had known this since childhood, watching her mother work 3 jobs, seeing her father's architecture firm slowly collapse under debt, understanding that her dreams existed only in the margins of her family's survival. But she never imagined sacrifice would look like this. "His name is Park Junho," her father said, sliding a folder across his desk. 34, CEO of JH Electronics. Net worth approximately $800 million. He's agreed to the arrangement. Zara's hands went cold. What arrangement? Marriage. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. In exchange, his company will acquire 40% of our firm and clear all outstanding debts. You'll live in Seoul. You'll want for nothing. The room tilted. You're selling me. Don't be dramatic. Her mother's voice was sharp from the doorway. This is opportunity. Do you know how many girls would kill for this chance? A tech mogul. Seoul. Financial security. Then let them have it, Zara said, her voice rising. I don't want to marry a stranger. I have a job here. I have a life. I have… What? Her father stood abruptly. What do you have, Zara? A position at an NGO that pays nothing. A rental apartment you can barely afford. Dreams that won't save this family from bankruptcy. Zara felt tears burning but refused to let them fall. Why does he need this? Why would a billionaire need to buy a wife from Ghana? Silence. The kind that meant her parents were hiding something crucial. There are rumors, her mother said finally, about his preferences. He needs a wife to stabilize his image. You need security. It's mutually beneficial. Understanding crashed over her like ice water. He's gay. You're marrying me off to a gay man who needs me as a cover. We don't know that for certain, her father said quickly. And does it matter? You'll live like royalty, Zara. He's promised freedom, your own space, everything you need. Except dignity, she whispered. Except choice. The papers are already signed, her father said quietly. The first payment has cleared. You leave for Seoul in 2 weeks. Seoul was sensory overload. The cold bit through every layer Zara owned. Incheon Airport was a cathedral of glass and efficiency. And everywhere, eyes followed her, curious, sometimes hostile, always assessing her dark skin like she was an exhibit. Her friend Nana had insisted on coming, using vacation days to help Zara settle. This is insane, Nana whispered, staring at the sleek black car waiting for them. Are you absolutely sure? No, Zara said. But what choice do I have? A driver in an expensive suit approached with a slight bow. Miss Mensah, I am Secretary Choi. Mr. Park sends his regrets. An urgent board meeting. I'll take you to the residence. Of course. Even meeting his purchased bride took second place to business. The drive through Seoul was surreal. Neon bleeding through gray skis, skyscrapers that seemed to defy physics, everything moving with a precision that felt almost robotic. The building they stopped at looked like it cost more than Zara's entire neighborhood back home. Mr. Park's residence, Secretary Choi announced. 42nd floor. Your belongings will be delivered shortly. The apartment was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Namsan Tower. Furniture that looked sculptural rather than functional. Everything white and black and chrome. A showroom, not a home. Mr. Park will meet you for dinner at 8. The restaurant is in Gangnam. A car will collect you at 7:30. Please dress formally. Then he left, and Zara stood alone in her gilded cage. We can still run, Nana said desperately. We can figure something out. But they couldn't. The money was transferred. The debt was cleared. The contract was ironclad. I'll survive this, Zara said, more to herself than Nana. It's just business. I can handle business. She'd been sitting alone at the restaurant table for 37 minutes when he finally arrived. The other diners, Seoul's elite and designer labels, had been throwing her pitying looks for the past 10 minutes. Humiliation burned through her veins. She was gathering her things to leave when the restaurant went silent. Zara looked up and saw him. Park Junho moved through the space like he owned it. Tall, devastating in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her father's yearly salary. Sharp features that looked carved from marble. High cheekbones, defined jaw, lips pressed into a line that suggested smiling was a foreign concept. His eyes, dark and calculating, swept the room before landing on her. Zara's breath caught. The photos hadn't prepared her for the reality of him. He reached her table without rushing. When he spoke, his English was flawless but cold. Miss Mensah, you're late, she blinked. I'm what? I specified 7:30 arrival. It's now 7:34. Punctuality is basic professionalism. Fury replaced shock. Zara stood abruptly. You're 37 minutes late to meet the woman you paid to marry, and you're lecturing me about punctuality. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. I was detained by… I don't care. Zara grabbed her bag. Tell Secretary Choi to book my flight home. Tell my father the deal is off. I'd rather drown in debt than marry someone who can't show basic respect. She made it 4 steps before his hand caught her wrist. The touch sent electricity up her arm. "Wait! Let me go, please." The word sounded like it cost him everything. "You're right, I was unconscionably rude. Please sit, let me start over." Zara should have kept walking, should have trusted her instincts, but something in his voice, a crack in that perfect control, made her pause. 5 minutes, she said coldly. "Explain why I shouldn't leave." He released her immediately. Up close, she could see exhaustion shadowing his eyes, tension in his jaw. He looked like a man barely holding himself together. "I was late because my board spent the last 2 hours questioning my decision to marry someone they consider unsuitable." "Unsuitable," Zara repeated flatly. "Because I'm Ghanaian, because I'm black, because you're not what they expected for me, because this marriage threatens their carefully constructed narrative." He paused. "I criticized your timing because I'm terrible at human interaction and I defaulted to business protocol. It was inappropriate. I apologize." "You're terrible at apologies." "Yes, I'm terrible at most things involving emotion, which is why I need this arrangement." His expression remained neutral, but something in his voice shifted. "The rumors about me are destroying business relationships. International partners are uncomfortable. The board questions every decision I make. I'm exhausted from defending myself against speculation I can't control." "What's the truth?" Zara asked quietly. "Does it matter?" He leaned back, studying her with those calculating eyes. "You're here because your family needed capital. I'm here because I need credibility. This is transactional. Pretending otherwise wastes both our time." The words should have hurt. Instead, Zara felt recognition. Here was someone as trapped as she was. "Fine," she said. "Then let me be clear about my terms. I'll play the perfect wife in public. I'll smile for cameras, learn Korean customs, wear the right clothes. But privately, you treat me with respect. You show up when you say you will. You treat me like a human being, not a problem you solved with money. Can you do that?" Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. "Yes, I can do that." "Then we have a deal, Mr. Park." "Junho," he corrected. "If we're doing this, use my name." "Junho." The name felt strange on her tongue, foreign and intimate all at once. After they ordered, Junho said, "I know you have a degree in international development from University of Ghana. I know you speak English, Twi, and you. I know you wanted to pursue graduate work in Geneva before circumstances changed. I know your favorite food is wakai, which we won't find authentic versions of here. But I've located a West African restaurant in Yongsan that might suffice." Zara didn't know whether to be impressed or unsettled. "You researched me." "I research everything. It's how I built my company." "Well, you missed something," Zara said. "My dreams aren't dead, just delayed. I'll play your wife, Junho, but I won't disappear. And when this ends, when you don't need me anymore, I'm reclaiming my life." "When this ends," he repeated softly. "You're already planning our divorce." "Aren't you?" He was quiet for a long moment. "No, I don't do anything halfway. If I marry, I stay married. Divorce would damage my reputation worse than the rumors." Zara laughed bitterly. "So I'm trapped forever in a loveless marriage to a man who might not even be attracted to women. What a fairy tale." "Love is inefficient," Junho said flatly. "What we have is better, clear expectations, no emotional complications." Zara should have been relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. What a lonely way to exist. The dinner continued with careful, formal conversation. By the end, they'd established ground rules. Separate bedrooms, minimal physical contact beyond public appearances, weekly check-ins to maintain the illusion. It was practical, efficient, everything Junho preferred. It was also the loneliest agreement Zara had ever made. When he drove her back to the apartment, Junho walked her to the elevator with stiff formality. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. I've hired coordinators. You'll have fittings, language lessons, cultural training, media coaching. It will be intensive." "I can handle intensive." "I believe you can." He paused. "Thank you for not running, for giving this a chance despite how terrible I am at being human." Before Zara could respond, the elevator doors closed. She rode up to her floor thinking, this is my life now. But what neither of them knew was that loneliness was gasoline, and some sparks, once lit, consumed everything in their path. The wedding was a spectacle. 400 guests Zara had never met. A ceremony that cost more than most people earned in a decade. Media outlets Junho's team had carefully selected. Zara wore a custom hanbok that cost more than her father's car and smiled until her face ached. Through it all, Junho stood beside her like a statue, his hand on her waist only when cameras appeared, his expression perfect and empty. At the reception, his business associates congratulated him with barely concealed curiosity. Korean socialites who'd been vying for his attention looked at Zara with thinly veiled disdain. And Zara smiled and nodded and played her part while dying inside. "You're performing well," Junho murmured during their first dance. His hand on her back was impersonal, mechanical. "I'm so glad I'm adequate," Zara said sweetly, loud enough only for him to hear. His jaw tightened. "That's not what I meant. Isn't it?" She met his eyes. "Isn't that all this is, a performance?" He didn't answer, just held her through the dance with careful distance. When it ended, he disappeared into conversations with executives while Zara smiled at strangers and wondered how she'd survive this. That night, back at the apartment, Junho walked her to her bedroom door. "You did well today. Get some rest. I have an early meeting." "Junho," Zara stopped him before he could leave. "Can I ask you something?" He turned, guarded. "What? The rumors about you, are they true?" Silence stretched between them. Then would it matter if they were? I want to know what I'm dealing with. I want to know if this," she gestured between them, "will always be nothing." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. "What do you want me to say, Zara? That I'm going to suddenly fall in love with you? That this arrangement will become a romance? Because I can't promise that. I don't know how to be what you want." "I'm not asking you to love me," Zara said quietly. "I'm asking if you'll ever see me, really see me, not as a solution to your problem, but as a person." Junho stared at her for a long moment. "I see you," he said finally, his voice rough. "More than you know, but seeing you and knowing what to do about it are two different things." Then he left, and Zara stood alone in the hallway, her heart pounding with something she couldn't name. The first 3 months of marriage were ice. They maintained separate schedules, ate separate meals, existed in the same space like ghosts who never touched. Junho worked constantly. 18-hour days that meant Zara barely saw him. And when she did, he was polite, distant, every inch the business partner she'd agreed to become. Zara tried to build a life. She enrolled in intensive Korean classes, started taking online courses toward her master's, explored Seoul with the cautious wonder of someone who knew she didn't belong. And she called home every week, lying to her mother about happiness while her father asked questions about Junho's business prospects. The loneliness was crushing. "You look miserable," Nana said during one video call. "Zara, if this is destroying you, I'm fine." "You're not fine, you're trapped with a man who treats you like furniture, that's not fine." "It's what I agreed to," Zara forced a smile. "And it's not terrible, the apartment is beautiful, Seoul is fascinating, I'm learning the language, it's manageable." But it wasn't manageable, it was slowly suffocating her. The cracks started showing in month 4. Zara was making breakfast, just for herself since Junho always left before dawn, when he appeared in the kitchen. He looked exhausted, his normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "You're up early," Zara said carefully. "Couldn't sleep." He moved to the coffee maker with mechanical efficiency. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You're not disturbing me, this is your home." "It's your home too," he said, not looking at her. "You don't have to act like a guest." "Don't I?" The words came out sharper than intended. "Junho, I've been here 4 months and I still don't know where half the things in this kitchen are. I have a bedroom I sleep in and a closet full of clothes someone else chose. This doesn't feel like my home. It feels like an expensive hotel where I happen to have a room." He turned then, something flickering in his expression. "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know," Zara said. "Maybe act like I exist. Maybe have a conversation that isn't about schedules or appearances. Maybe acknowledge that this is strange and difficult and neither of us knows what we're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing," Junho said coldly. "I'm maintaining our arrangement as agreed." "Right, the arrangement." Zara laughed bitterly. "God forbid we be actual human beings to each other." She left the kitchen before he could respond, her heart pounding with frustration and something else she didn't want to name. But she felt his eyes on her back as she walked away, felt the weight of something unspoken between them. Things shifted after that morning. Small changes, barely noticeable. Junho started coming home for dinner occasionally. They'd eat in careful silence at first, but slowly conversation began to happen. Small things. "How was your class? Did you finish that report? The forecast says snow this weekend." He asked about her studies, her progress with Korean, whether she'd found the West African restaurant he'd mentioned. "It's decent," Zara told him. Not like home, but decent. The owner is Nigerian. She asks about you sometimes, wants to know if the famous Park Junho actually exists or if I invented him. What do you tell her? That I'm still trying to figure that out myself. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. The small changes accumulated. He started leaving notes when he had to leave early. Practical things when he'd return whether she needed anything. But it was something, an acknowledgement that she existed. Zara started leaving Korean news on in the morning, knowing he'd watch it over breakfast. Started keeping his preferred coffee stocked. Small gestures that felt absurd but somehow necessary. They were learning each other. Slowly, carefully, like two people trying to decode a language neither of them spoke. And then, 4 months into the marriage, everything shattered. Zara woke at 2 a.m. to sounds in the living room. Crashes. A man's voice speaking rapid Korean. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, about to call security when her bedroom door burst open. The man who entered was young, desperate-looking, and holding a knife. Everything after that blurred. The cold blade against her ribs, her own voice screaming Junho's name, the intruder dragging her to the living room, and then Junho appearing like something from a nightmare, the look on his face. You have 3 seconds to take your hands off my wife. And chaos, violence, the intruder on the floor. The knife skittering away. Junho's hands on her face, checking for injuries. The fear in his eyes, raw and desperate and absolutely terrifying in its intensity. I felt it, he said, his voice breaking. I was presenting to the Lee Holdings board and I felt this panic that wasn't mine, this terror, and I knew something was wrong with you, so I left, told them to postpone a 9 billion won merger and caught the first train back because I had to make sure you were safe. Why would you care? Zara whispered. We're not, this isn't real. Everyone's been wrong about me, Junho said, his voice rough. But you're my wife, Zara, mine. And anyone who threatens you threatens me. The police arrived, took statements, arrested the intruder, apparently a former employee seeking revenge. Zara answered questions in a daze, wrapped in a blanket, while Junho stood beside her like a sentinel. When they finally left, when the apartment was quiet again, Zara stood in their wrecked living room and started shaking. Everything that hadn't hit her during the crisis crashed over her now. Zara. Junho was there immediately, pulling her against his chest. You're safe, I've got you. I thought he was going to kill me, she whispered into his shirt. He didn't, you're safe. His arms tightened. I won't let anyone hurt you, ever, do you understand? Zara pulled back enough to look at him. Really look at him, at the fear still shadowing his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he was holding her like she might disappear. The rumors, she said quietly, about you, they're not true, are they? Junho's expression shuddered. Zara, are they? He was quiet for a long moment. No, they were never true. Then why? Because it was easier. He released her, stepping back, and she immediately missed his warmth. In my industry, in my position, people make assumptions, and I let them because the truth. He stopped, jaw clenching. What's the truth? The truth is I'm not good at relationships, at emotional connections, at being what people need. He looked away. The truth is I watched my parents destroy each other with what they called love. Watched them use affection as a weapon, and I swore I'd never let that happen to me. So I built walls, and when people started assuming things about me, I let them, because it meant they stopped expecting me to feel things I didn't know how to feel. And us, Zara's heart was pounding. What are we? I don't know. He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there nearly destroyed her. I told myself this was just business, just an arrangement. But then you moved in and you were, everywhere, in my kitchen making tea, learning Korean, asking about my day. And I didn't know what to do with that, with you. So you avoided me. So I avoided you, he agreed, because I didn't know how to be around you without, he stopped. Without what? Without wanting more than what we agreed to. The confession hung between them like a living thing. I want more too, Zara whispered. I didn't think I would, I thought this would stay transactional. But then you came back tonight. You left $1 billion deal because you felt something was wrong, and I can't. I can't pretend anymore that this is just an arrangement. Junho stared at her. Zara, I don't know how to do this, how to be a real husband to you. Then we'll figure it out together. She stepped closer. Because I don't know how to be a real wife either. We can learn together. I'll probably mess it up, he said roughly. I'll work too much and forget to communicate and default to business mode when I'm uncomfortable. And I'll call you on it, and we'll fight, and we'll figure it out. For a long moment, they just stood there, staring at each other in the wreckage of their living room. Then Junho reached out, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "I'm going to kiss you now," he said quietly. "If you don't want," Zara pulled him down and kissed him first. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It was desperate and clumsy and perfect. It tasted like coffee and relief, and the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Junho rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he murmured. "I know. I'm going to be terrible at this." "Probably," Zara agreed. "But you'll try, and so will I, and maybe that's enough." It was enough. It had to be enough. Because this story, this impossible, unexpected story, was just beginning. The transformation wasn't instant. Junho didn't suddenly become perfect. He still worked too much, still struggled with emotional expression, still defaulted to business mode when uncomfortable. But he tried. He started coming home every night, started asking about Zara's day and actually listening, started leaving notes, "Thought of you during the meeting, coming home early tonight." That made her smile. Zara started learning his patterns, the way he got quiet when stressed. The way he'd stand at the window, staring out at Seoul when processing something. The way he'd reach for her hand without seeming to realize it. They had their first real fight 3 weeks after the break-in, something minor. Junho canceled plans to take an emergency call. Zara accused him of reverting to old patterns. He accused her of being unreasonable. They both said things they didn't mean. And then Junho did something that shocked her. He apologized first. "I prioritized work over you again," he said, finding her in the bedroom where she'd retreated. "And that's not fair when I promised to try." "I overreacted," Zara admitted. "I know your work is important. You're more important." He sat beside her on the bed. "I'm still learning to show that, but I mean it, Zara. You're more important than any deal or merger. I just need you to be patient while I figure out how to prove it." "I can be patient," Zara said softly, "as long as you keep trying." "I promise." He pulled her into his arms. "I'll keep trying." The changes accumulated. Junho started taking Sundays off, something his assistant said he'd never done. They explored Seoul together, finding hidden markets and quiet temples. He held her hand in public now, not for appearances, but because he wanted to. At night, they fell asleep in the same bed, wrapped around each other like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. "I never thought I could have this," Junho murmured one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "This kind of connection. I convinced myself I didn't want it." "What changed?" "You," he kissed her forehead. "You refused to let me hide. You pushed back when I tried to keep distance. You made me want to try. I'm glad I pushed." "So am I." Zara turned in his arms to face him. "The media is going to be a problem, you know that, right? When people realize this is real, that we're actually together." "Let them talk," Junho said. "I don't care anymore what they think. The only opinion that matters is yours." "And what's my opinion?" "I'm hopping," he pulled her closer, "that you think I'm worth the trouble." Zara kissed him softly. "You're definitely worth the trouble." 6 months into their marriage, Junho took Zara back to Accra to see her family properly. Not as the business arrangement he'd purchased, but as the wife he'd fallen in love with. Her father opened the door and stared at them, at how Junho's arm was wrapped around Zara's waist, how she was leaning into him, how they looked at each other. "Papa," Zara said softly, "I want you to meet my husband properly this time." Dinner was awkward at first. Her parents clearly didn't know what to make of this new dynamic. But as the evening wore on, as they watched Junho help Zara in the kitchen, laugh at her jokes, look at her like she hung the moon, understanding dawned. "You love her," her father said quietly when Zara stepped out to take a call. "Actually love her." "Yes," Junho said simply, "more than I thought I could love anyone." "I'm sorry," her father said, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry I sold her to you like property. I thought I was saving the family, but I nearly destroyed my daughter's happiness." "You didn't destroy anything," Junho said. "You gave me the greatest gift of my life. I just had to learn how to appreciate it." That night, lying in Zara's childhood bedroom, she asked, "Do you regret it, that we started the way we did?" "Never," Junho pulled her closer. "Because every day I get to choose you, not because of a contract or obligation, but because I want to, because I love you. And that means everything." Zara kissed him in the darkness of her childhood room, in the place where she'd once cried herself to sleep over this arrangement, and thought, this is how love stories are supposed to work. Not perfect from the start, but willing to become perfect together. 1 year into their marriage, JH Electronics held its annual gala. Seoul's entire elite would be there, the press would be circling. And this time, Zara wasn't nervous. She wore a stunning gown, midnight blue, Junho's favorite color, on her, and stood beside her husband with confidence she'd earned. "You're starring," Zara murmured as they took their seats. "Can't help it," Junho said, not looking away. "You're the most beautiful woman here. You're biased." "Absolutely." He brought her hand to his lips. "And I don't care who knows it." The whispers had long since changed from speculation about his sexuality to fascination with their love story. The cold CEO who'd melted for his arranged bride. The Ghanaian woman who'd captured Korea's most eligible bachelor's heart. During his speech, Junho did something unexpected. "Before I discuss this year's performance," he said, his eyes finding Zara in the crowd, "I want to say something personal." He extended his hand toward Zara. She rose, moving to stand beside him, her heart in her throat. "Zara," he said in English so she'd understand every word. "You came into my life as a solution to a problem. You became my wife because of contracts and obligations and mutual benefit. But you became my everything because you refused to let me hide. You saw past every wall I built and loved me anyway. You taught me that loving someone doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger than you ever imagined." Tears streamed down Zara's face. "So I want everyone here to know," Junho continued, his voice rough with emotion, "that this woman beside me isn't just my wife in name. She's my partner, my best friend, the person I choose every single day. And I'm the luckiest man alive because she chooses me back." The applause was deafening, but Zara didn't hear it. She only heard Junho whisper, "I love you," as he pulled her into his arms. "I love you too," she whispered back, "even when you're terrible at being human." He laughed, that rare, genuine laugh she'd worked so hard to coax from him. "Especially then." They kissed in front of Seoul's elite, in front of cameras and journalists and everyone who'd ever doubted them. And Zara thought, this is what happens when two people refuse to accept that their story is supposed to be cold. Sometimes the impossible becomes inevitable. Sometimes the arrangement becomes the love story. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to choose each other, every single day. But what they didn't know, what nobody in that glittering ballroom could have predicted, was that 6 months later, Zara would discover something that would test everything they'd built. Something that would force Junho to make an impossible choice. Something that would prove whether their love was strong enough to survive the truth about why that intruder had really come for her that night. Because some secrets don't stay buried. And some promises demand a price neither of them was prepared to pay. But that's a story for another time.